A vellum codex sits inside the British Library, catalogued as Additional Manuscript 5114. Each of its 174 leaves measures exactly 27.5 centimeters by 19 centimeters. The folios have been digitized, but full high-resolution access requires institutional credentials. It has not been handled by the public since the British Museum acquired it in 1785. The text inside does not describe the afterlife in symbols or metaphor. It names, with procedural specificity, exactly who waits in the light. Suppressed, reclassified, called heretical. By 180 CE, the text had been removed from approved scripture, its copies scattered, its teachings forbidden to the congregations that had already been reading it for generations. The church did not debate it, they buried it. Then, in 1773, a private dealer in Alexandria sold a bound Coptic manuscript to a collector. One manuscript, and the status of everything the early church had tried to erase flipped overnight. The Pistis Sophia is not allegory. It is not poetry. It is a literal, operational map of what happens to a soul after physical death. Who intercepts it, where it travels, what forces govern its passage, and what the structure of that entire system looks like from the inside. The text does not speculate. It enumerates. It names names. In the next several minutes, you will see what the text names, what modern near-death experience data confirms with matching precision, and why the institution that called this document dangerous had every rational reason to keep it buried. If suppressed sacred history is the kind of evidence you want more of, hit subscribe. Every week, we surface what was removed. The first thing the text establishes is not a place, it is a personnel system. In the Codex Escuian, folio 107R, preserved in the British Library under Additional Manuscript 5114, the passage translated by Violet McDermott in her 1978 Brill edition describes entities assigned to the soul at the moment of departure from the body. The Coptic term used is paralambonantes, not guides, not escorts. The root verb is paralambano, to take alongside, to receive, to collect. These are collectors. The distinction matters. A guide accompanies you by choice. A collector is waiting because it is their function. The text frames this as a system with assigned roles, not a spontaneous welcome. The text specifies the timing of this interception. Within 3 days of physical death, the collectors move. That is not a metaphor for transition. It reads as protocol, a procedural window, the kind of operational detail you include in a document because the timing is relevant to what happens next. He had no way to know the timing. The author of this text, writing in Coptic sometime in the 3rd century, had no access to modern cardiac monitoring, no clinical data on resuscitation outcomes, no peer-reviewed literature on what people report when they return from the threshold. Yet the text specifies a 3-day window, with the same tone a field manual uses to describe a retrieval operation. Now consider what the International Association for Near-Death Studies published in their 2023 survey data. 74% of near-death experience subjects reported being met by a presence before any encounter with light. Not after the light, before it. The presence comes first. The collection happens at the gate, not inside it. That is not a loose parallel. That is a structural match across 17 centuries of separation. The ancient text names the function. The modern clinical data names the sequence. Both describe interception as the first event. Both place it between the moment of death and whatever comes after. The Pistis Sophia does not call these figures angels in the warm, luminous sense that centuries of church iconography have embedded in the cultural imagination. It calls them receivers, functional agents operating within a hierarchy. And the 74% of NDE subjects who describe being met by a presence before light, before any sense of warmth or welcome, are describing the same structural event in the language of lived experience, rather than doctrinal framework. The impossible knowledge beat here is not about the existence of an afterlife. It is about the architecture. The text does not say you might encounter something. It says a specific class of entity with a specific Coptic designation intercepts the soul within a specific window. That level of procedural detail is not the language of comfort. It is the language of a system that was mapped by someone who either witnessed it, received a transmission from someone who did, or was working from a source document older than the Coptic manuscript we currently hold in London. McDermott's 1978 translation remains the standard English rendering of this passage. She renders paralambonantes as receivers throughout, and she notes in her critical apparatus that the term carries no connotation of benevolence or hostility, only function. They receive. That is the entirety of their described purpose in this section of the text. And the text does not stop with the collectors. Above the receivers, the Pistis Sophia describes a layered structure, levels of authority, zones of jurisdiction, a hierarchy that governs not just the moment of interception, but the entire trajectory of what follows. The collectors are the first gate, but the text names what built the gates, what holds them in place, and what force keeps the system running across every human death that has ever occurred. And this is where it gets disturbing. Pull open Codex Ascuvianus to folio 35 verso. The manuscript sits in the British Library under Acquisition Reference Additional 5114. Violet McDermott produced the authoritative English translation in 1978, and the passage she rendered from Pistis Sophia Book 1 is one of the most technically specific sentences in all of ancient literature. It names a structure, it gives that structure a function, and it gives that function a number. The structure is called the hymarmene. That is a Greek word, and it does not translate gently. Hymarmene, from the verb mero, meaning to receive one's portion by lot. Compulsory fate. Not destiny chosen, not karma earned, fate apportioned. The thing that is assigned to you, whether you consent to it or not. The text does not use this word loosely. It uses it the way an engineer labels a component on a schematic, and then it gives the schematic a rotation count. The sphere of the hymarmene, according to folio 35 verso, completes 1,460 turns per cosmic year. Sit with that number. 1,460. A 3rd century Coptic manuscript is not offering poetry here. It is offering a figure, a precise, verifiable, architectural figure describing the cycling mechanism that redistributes souls into new bodies after death. Dr. Marvin Meyer addressed this directly in the 2007 edition of the Gnostic Bible, published by Shambhala. Meyer identifies the hymarmene as what he calls the recycling engine of the Gnostic cosmos, the apparatus through which souls are sorted, assigned, and reinserted into material existence. He is not using that language metaphorically. He is translating a functional description from a text that treats soul redistribution as a mechanical process with measurable parameters. Now here is the impossible knowledge beat. Dr. Michael Newton spent 30 years conducting between-life regression sessions. His 1994 publication, Journey of Souls, and his subsequent studies compiled data from over 7,000 individual cases. 7,000. In those sessions, subjects under deep hypnosis independently described a stage in the between-life process that Newton called the sorting stage, a point of evaluation and assignment before re-entry into physical existence. Not a resting place, not a final destination, a processing point, a gate with a function. Newton had no access to Codex Ascuvianus. He was a California hypnotherapist working with living subjects in clinical settings. The subjects he worked with had no demonstrated knowledge of Pistis Sophia or Gnostic cosmology. And yet, the architecture they described, a structured intermediate zone where souls are evaluated and redistributed, maps onto the hymarmene with a precision that a coincidence theory cannot comfortably hold. A 3rd century scribe encoded a rotating sphere that sorts souls into new bodies. A 20th century researcher with 7,000 clinical cases found the same sorting stage. Different centuries, different methodologies, same mechanism. The hymarmony is not the end of the system. It feeds something larger. And what it feeds is not a place of rest or liberation. The text is explicit about this. The sphere delivers souls to a structure of 12 distinct holding zones, each governed, each locked, and each requiring some.
Before we continue, some of what I've learned simply never makes it onto YouTube. That's why I started the Gnostic newsletter, a free newsletter where I go deeper into esoteric Gnostic teachings, hidden wisdom, and the mysteries we don't share in these videos. And when you sign up, you'll receive a Gnostic guide to mastering reality as a welcome gift, completely free. You'll find it through the link in the description below or by scanning the QR code on your screen. I'll give you a moment to do that.
The soul must already possess to pass through. And this is where the architecture becomes a trap. Turn to folio 92 recto in the same codex. Pistis Sophia Book 2, McDermott's 1978 translation, renders the passage with careful attention to its structural language. And the structure it describes is not vague. It is enumerated. 12 units, 12 rulers, 12 gates. The Coptic term used throughout this passage is Iwen, rendered in English as Aeon. Unpack that word carefully. Iwen does not simply mean age or long duration, though those translations appear in general use. In the cosmological framework of Pistis Sophia, each Iwen is a discrete realm with a governing archon, a defined boundary, and a specific demand placed on any soul that attempts to move through it. An age that holds you. A realm with a ruler and a requirement. 12 of them. Stacked. Sequential. And here is what the text says about the requirement. Each aeon demands a mystery before it permits passage. The Coptic uses a word that carries the sense of a specific vibrational signature, a password that is not spoken, but recognized. If the soul carries the correct mystery, the gate opens. If it does not, the text states the consequence with clinical precision. The soul is returned to the sphere within 40 cosmic days. Returned to the sphere. The hymarmony, the recycling engine. This is not punishment theology. The text does not frame it in terms of sin or moral failure. It frames it as a mechanical outcome. The soul lacks the correct configuration. The gate does not open. The sphere receives the soul again. The rotation continues. The soul is redistributed into a new body. The cycle repeats. Now consider what a 3rd century author would need to have known to write this passage. Not spiritual intuition, architectural knowledge. 12 distinct checkpoints, each with a named ruler, each with a specific differentiated requirement, each connected to a return mechanism with a defined time parameter. This is not the work of a mystic writing in metaphor. This is the work of someone describing a system they believed was real, functional, and operating at the moment they wrote it. No equivalent 12-stage post-mortem architecture appears in any canonical text of the same period. The precision is isolated. It exists in one manuscript, on one folio, translated by one scholar whose work remains the standard reference 47 years after publication. Modern consciousness researchers have approached the 12-stage structure from a different angle. studies in near-death phenomenology have identified recurring descriptions of sequential encounter zones in the between-life state, zones with distinct qualities, distinct inhabitants, and distinct outcomes for different individuals. The architecture is not always counted, but the sequentiality is consistent. The sense of moving through distinct thresholds, each with its own character and its own demand, surfaces across cultures and centuries in the testimony of people who were not reading Pistis Sophia. A 3rd century Coptic author described 12 locked sequential checkpoints with differentiated requirements and a return mechanism. Modern consciousness research describes sequential threshold zones with distinct inhabitants and differential outcomes. The century bridge does not require a leap. It requires only that you look at both bodies of evidence at the same time. But here's what makes this stranger. The entities stationed at these checkpoints are not described as abstract forces or symbolic representations. The text gives them a form, a specific, morphological, non-metaphorical form. And that form has appeared in modern clinical data in a percentage so precise it stops the room. Folio 132 recto, Codex Ascuianus, Pistis Sophia Book 3, McDermott, 1978. The passage on this folio introduces a term that Coptic scholars have handled carefully because its implications are not comfortable. The term is drakon morphos. Break that apart. Drakon, dragon. Morphos, formed. Dragon formed. This is not a metaphor waiting to be spiritualized. Morphos in Coptic and Greek usage is a morphological descriptor. It describes physical configuration, the way a body is shaped. Drakon morphos means these entities have the structural form of a dragon. The scribe is not reaching for symbolism. The scribe is describing what they look like. And here is where the text places them. Not outside the luminous tunnel, not before the entrance to the tunnel. Inside it, stationed within the light itself. The passage on folio 132 recto is explicit on this point. The dragon-formed entities occupy the interior of the luminous passage. They are not guardians at the threshold. They are inhabitants of the light. This is the detail the text has been building toward since the receivers, since the Hymarmene, since the 12 eons. The system does not only operate at the boundary, it operates inside what the dying person perceives as liberation. The light is not the exit. The light contains the mechanism. Now the modern data. PMH Atwater is a near-death experience researcher who began cataloging cases in 1978. By the time of her major published studies, she had documented over 3,000 individual near-death accounts. In that dataset, 11% of subjects reported encountering distorted, threatening, or anomalous figures not outside the light, but within it. Not in a dark tunnel, not in a frightening void. Inside the luminous environment that the majority of near-death literature describes as benevolent and welcoming. 11%. Inside the light. A 3rd century Coptic scribe, working from a manuscript tradition that modern scholarship traces to 2nd century Alexandria, described entities of dragon form stationed inside the luminous passage. A 20th century researcher with 3,000 clinical cases found that 11% of subjects encountered threatening or distorted figures within the light itself. The scribe had no access to clinical near-death data. Atwater had no working knowledge of drakon morphos in Coptic cosmological texts. The number is not approximate. It is not a range. 11%. Cataloged. Published. Verifiable. This is the impossible knowledge beat at its sharpest. Not a general thematic overlap. A specific anomaly, present in a minority of cases, described with morphological precision in a manuscript that has been sitting in the British Library since 1785. The data point existed in the ancient text for 17 centuries before the clinical researcher began counting. The Pistis Sophia calls this entire structure, the receivers, the sphere, the 12 eons, the dragon-formed entities inside the light, the counterfeit spirit, the false cosmos, a system built to resemble liberation while functioning as recapture. And the text does not leave the architect unnamed. The mechanism has a designer. The Pistis Sophia identifies that designer by title, by domain, and by the specific role they play in keeping every soul that passes through death cycling back into the system. The mechanism is still running. The Codex Iscuian sits in the British Library right now. Folio 132R is photographable. The IANS registry and the Newton Institute case archives are publicly searchable today, no credentials required. The dragon-formed receivers are named, located, and operationally described in a text you can verify before this video ends. That is not interpretation. That is the standing record. The tunnel of light is not a destination. It is a checkpoint. There is a warden inside it. The warden has a name. The mechanism described in that manuscript has been running, by its own account, since before recorded history. Nothing in the text suggests it has stopped. What did you feel the first time you heard about the tunnel of light? Tell us below. This archive goes deeper every week. Subscribe to stay inside it.